So the first thing you want to do is open up an Excel spreadsheet. So here's my spreadsheet here, and then you need to get your files. So all these files show different EDS spectra, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to put all these files into the Excel spreadsheet. So I'll take the first one and just block it, Control A, Control C, and then put it in. It includes quite a lot of other information about the spectra itself on the top, but I don't delete that. The main bit that you want is down here, and this has got the data on the left and the right here, but this data here needs to be split into two. So if I go back again, if I click all this right down to the bottom, and I go data and text to columns, it gives you this little format over here. What we want to do is click delimited, next, and then we've got this. If we have a look down, oh, it can't go down, so look, we've got a comma here. So basically at the moment in Excel it sees this as one cell, and we want to separate this as two. So if you put a click where it says comma here, now it separates them into two cells, and we say next and then finish. And if we look down, now we've got the data points in two different cells. If I look on my previous one here, this is one I did earlier, where you've got the KV down the left hand side and the counts down the right hand side. So I'm going to put KV and counts as title, Control C. I'll go over back to the other one, put in a little space. Oh no. Try and put insert another little space. I don't know. Okay, I'm going to drag that all down to the bottom. It's a bit tedious. I'm going to move it down one. Come back to the top. And I'm going to get the title from the other page, which was kilovolts and counts. I just want to give it a title really, so we know which one's which. So down here we've got kilo electron volts down here, and we've got counts there. And basically what I'm going to do is, like I said, import all the data. So I'll do one more, and then I'll import the rest. So spectrum 2, Control A, Control C, put that to the top, leave a bit of a space in between each. Okay, and what I would do here is write the name spectrum 1, and here spectrum 2. Spectrum 2. So you know which one was 1, and I might put a little insert there. So we've got spectrum 1 is down here, spectrum 2. Doesn't matter that these are on different lines. It would be good, like I said, to there must be an easy way to insert two cells in there. Drag it down one. And we copy across. So we've got the title, kilo electron volts, and counts there. Right, I'm going to do the rest. So we'll, whilst I do that, and I'll bring the rest in. So now I've put all the data in. There's 10 in this series. All the data there. These ones here, these numbers here, if they get in the way, just delete them, like so. But you don't have to. It's just if they get in the way. Okay, with all this data here, the next step is to set up a graph. So we're going to select the data, so all the way down to the bottom. There, it's all that selected, that's the data. And we're going to go Insert, Charts, and if we use this one here, the curly one but without the data points, put that one in and we've got our graph. With this graph, if we right click it and we go format chart area, that's the wrong one, sorry. Right click it and we move the chart and move it into a new sheet. That makes it easier. So the data is here and the graph, sorry, the data is there and the graph is there. So I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call it data. And this one here, I'm going to rename, I'll call graph 1. And it's easy. I'm going to move that over there. I'll move the tabs over. So now the data is on the left tab and the graph is on the right one. And you can see that in terms of kilo electron volts, it goes all the way up to 10, just past 10, and from 0, and then it goes up to 25,000 counts. If you go to design, there's something called quick layout, and we normally go down to this one. So if you saw that, quick layout, this one down here, and it gives you the axes and the label here. So the axis title now, if I call it counts, and the bottom one is KV. And here I would then do some changes to this graph. So there's no point going down to -2. So what we're going to do is format axis, so that I go back to that to the bottom. I click it with my left mouse key to get the area here, and then I right click in that box. So left click it to get the box, right click it, format axis, and I'm going to go from 0 and I'm going to do it to 10 for the moment. Yeah, so I've got 0 to 10, these are counts, and here for the moment I'm going to leave the counts as they are. This goes down to -5,000, so I'm going to right click this one, format axis, and I'm going to take that down to 0. So now I've got, there's my initial pattern. It says at the moment counts 1, so if I right click this, select data, counts, and then edit it, the series name I'm going to change, because at the moment it says counts and that's no good for me. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to press this one, so spectrum 1, so that box here, and then I say OK, and OK, and now you see this one says spectrum 1. And all I'm going to do now is add on all the other spectra. They will overlap. So stage 1 is get them all in the graph, and then even though they're overlapping, and then step 2 is to copy this graph and then to move the graphs stepwise so that they're no longer overlapping. So I'm going to get the second one in. So select data, add, series name, I go click onto data and I'm going to click spectrum 2 box, and then XY values are the on this, the X is kilo electron volts, so I'm going to select KV and I'm going to drag that down. Like so. Then this Y value is a counts, so I'm going to select the counts. Like so. Say OK. Takes a moment for some reason. And then another one. And you can see actually that at the moment they're pretty overlapping, aren't they? So I'm going to do that for the next, import the next set of spectrum all the way up to the last spectrum, which is spectrum 10. So I've put them all in, and you can see them all overlapping. I've got spectrum 1 to spectrum 10 in that order, and there they are. And what I'm going to do now is going to make another graph. So this is graph 1, so I'm going to right click, on the graph where it says graph 1, right click, and it says move or copy. Click the box down here, it says create a copy, and that creates an identical copy, and I'm going to rename that, and I'm going to call it graph 2, and I'm going to move graph 2 over there. On this particular graph, if you have a look here, you start at 1 at the top and you go down to 10, whereas actually I want it the other way around. I want 1 at the bottom and then 10 at the top. So to change the order on here, right click, select data, and then you can see if you click number 1 and then there's an arrow here, click it down, and number 1 should do. It's a bit slow. It'll change the order of things. So number 1 is down there at the moment, and we keep clicking it a few times. It'll take a little bit of time. Wait, and number 1, right, is now at the bottom. You then need to do that for number 2. So click downwards. I just keep clicking it and then stop and wait. So I'm waiting. And now I'll have a look. I don't know why my computer's so slow this morning. There we go, go down to bottom 1. That's too far down, so I'll move it 1 position up. So number 1 is at the bottom, number 2 is next, and I'm going to order them all 1 to 10. So I've now got them all 1 at the bottom and 10 at the top. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the data now for spectrum 1. And the data for spectrum 1. I'm going to leave the data for spectrum 1 exactly as it is there. But number 2, when I come to the counts, what I'm going to do is I'm going to offset it by adding 400. So I'm going to do in this cell equals, click that cell which is J40 plus 400 and then return. And what I'm going to do is drag it down, and you'll see as I drag it down, it's adding 400 to all the counts up here. So I've typed offset here, and as I said, I'll carry on dragging down to the bottom. So that's that one done. Now actually what I'm going to do is repeat that, but offset each one by a bit more. So the next one is not 400, the next one's 800. So equals 800 plus that cell, return. I'll drag this one down. So these are all added on to 800. If I go now to graph 2, right click, select data, go to spectrum number 2. So first one we're leaving as it is. So we go to spectrum number 2, edit it, and then on the Y values, which are the counts, at the moment we've got this one here, but what I want you to do is drag it down instead onto the offset one, all the way to the bottom. Say OK. You can't really see it, but that one orange line is the offset one, so that's spectrum number 2. So we'll do spectrum number 3 now. Oh, say OK. Then right click, select data, and then we'll do the same for spectrum number 3. Edit. X value is fine, it's just the Y values. So Y value, it's spectrum number 3, and we're selecting this one on the offset by 800. Say OK. Okay, again, and then number 3 is the grey one, which is just appearing here. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going back into the data. I will keep on offsetting. I'll do it all in one go now. I'll offset 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 first, increasing by 400 each time. And then I will go into the graph itself, and then I will select the data but select the new offset values. And then once I've done all that, then hopefully all the spectra should be offset and you should be able to clearly see them 1 to 10. So I've now done all 10 spectra, and there they are, all lined up. At the moment they're all different colours. There's a couple of things really. Number one is they're pretty close together, so I think this offset of 400, probably 400 isn't right. So you have to use your own judgment a little bit on this one. The other thing is that it depends on what areas you're interested in, but the interesting area that I'm most focused on, I think, for the lead samples at least, is between 0 and 4. So I'm going to just change the axes. So this is my graph. Basically, I want the graphs to look so similar to all the graphs in sort of style. So this is the graph that we've got so far, and then if we go to look, this is the graph that's closer to what I wanted. That, remember, we're going to change eventually into this one here, but this one looks closer to it, and you can see there's an adequate amount of spacing, and you can sort of distinguish the different peaks. If I go to the graph that we've just done, it's harder to do so because, like I said, they're all pressed together. Now, in actual fact, these peaks here, this big one, the first one here is a carbon peak. Just check on that for a moment. First one's a carbon, yeah. So the first one is a carbon peak here, and this one here, the lead peaks. So perhaps we're less interested in carbon peaks. A bit harder to understand. Everything absorbs carbon, and it's harder to sort of to deal with. It tells you less information rather. Whereas the lead thing, we know that there's going to be lead in all the samples. So to get it looking more like the other one went up to 16,000 counts. Now I don't know, but I think my feeling is to change this one to 16,000 counts. So if I do that, to change it by clicking that, right clicking, format axis, it will change to 16,000. And now this one sort of looks a bit closer to this one here. But there's still a few little issues on this. So one of the things of the issues is that it starts off well with quite well, but then here I think my grey is kind of close to the yellow here, and then this one here, this grey here, is close to this sort of browny one here. So it looks like really I could do with changing these again to these offsets. So 400 looks fine there, 400 looks fine for that one, 400 for that one here, but this one, because it goes close, I would say the next offset is not 400 but 800. So maybe when you're doing these graphs, it's better to do it doing the offset each time, and maybe setting it at 16,000 times and then doing it that way. So I'm going to change these. So I'm going to go into the yellow one is spectrum 4. So I'll go to data for, sorry, spectrum 4. Move that back over there. Data for spectrum 4. I'm going to change it to the offset, and I'm going to make that 1600 now. And I'm going to drag that down. So it does mean that everything else has to change too. So I look back at graph number 2, and now sample number 4, you can see is a little bit better. So now this one here, sample number 5, will have to offset by whatever 4 was plus 400. So we know that number 4 is now adding 1600. So this one is going to be 2000. Whoops. We're going to the 2000. I'll drag that one down. It might seem like a lot of effort, but you do end up with something, a graph, which you, if you wanted to, you could publish and without changing things too much. So now we've done number 5. number 6 has disappeared, you can't see it. Number 6 means offset by 400. So what I'm going to do now is offset them all. When I get up to the brown one, number 8, the one after that I'm going to offset by 800 instead of another 400 because the lines are so close to each other. Basically, you want a set of lines where they're sort of apart from each other. If there's similar distance apart, that's great. It just visually looks better. So that's what I'm going to go and do now. So now I've got them all stacked and they're all looking better. There is just one last thing, and that is this spectrum number 10. Now I know that spectrum number 10 came from the carbon resin, and so it's very different. In fact, you can see there's only a bit of a lead peak here, and because it's so different, I'm going to offset it a bit more. So instead of offsetting by 400, I'm going to give a bit of a gap. I'm going to do about 1,500. So I'm going to offset the last one by 1,500 more than what I've got already. So in fact 1,500, that's about 6,000. So if I put 6,000 there, go into graph 2. Okay, there you go. So those are all the peaks on the lead metal, or sorry, the lead pipe. With some of them are the lead pipe and some of the corrosion layer are all here, and then this brown one here, that's the one which is slightly different because it's the resin. So let's. It's not quite finished here, so I'm going to make a copy. So this one is our original overlay. Graph 2 is their offset. I'm going to copy the one, move or copy, select that, create a copy group. This one here is, rename it, it's graph 3. I'm going to move this over there, it's graph 3. This one, what I want to do is get graph 3 looking a bit now like this graph here. So I want it in grey, so it's good for publishing. You'll notice a couple of things. It goes from 0 to 4, it goes up in every 0.5, and this one goes up in every 2,000. So I'm going to change all the axes to get it looking like that. So let's go back to this graph. It's going to 4. So left click the box, right click format axis, go up to 4. It's going up in minor units of 0.5. So it's going 0, 0.51. With these ones here, the number, it needs to be kind of consistent. So we're going to change it to scientific. We're doing scientific or just number. Maybe that's number. That's better. And decimal number places, I think it's 1 decimal place is fine. Because then they all read the same decimal places. You don't really want 0.0 then you don't want 0, 0.5, 1, 1.5 because the different numbers are decimal places. So that's that. This goes up in 2,000. I keep referring back to the other graph here. This goes up in 2,000s, but it's got a tick mark every 1,000. So I'll come back to my one here and put that tick mark. Here it's going minor units every 400. Let's make it every 1,000. And you've got to click the tick marks here and make sure that the minor one is selected for outside. That might say yes. And something's not right. Major unit is 2,000. Oh, minor unit should have been 1,000. 0. Okay, so there we go. So now it's looking a bit better, up to 1,600 counts, KV. Everything, it may not be the same on your computer, but everything on mine for some reason defaults to grey, and I need to change it to not to grey. So the font needs to go, oh dear, that's the wrong one. The font needs to go to black because it's much easier to read. So I'm going to click that to black. Everything needs to go to black. So on here, the tick marks in here if a format axis here, they need to go to black. On your computer it might not be like this, but on mine everything on the colours fonts to grey. It's irritating. So that's, click there, click this one here, the colour to black. What else do I need? Let's go back to that original grass. I'll get rid of those grid marks. So this one I can just touch the grid marks, delete. Oh, did it do that? Not sure what it did there. Texture deleter. That gone, and that's gone. Have been deleted, right? Okay, those, all the tick marks have gone. I'd like a border around here, so I'll click there and put in solid line. So now it's got a solid line around there. Now the other thing to do, if I look back on this graph, is they're a bit thicker lined and they're all dark. And if I click on this one, I would just check what the data says for. It says 2.25 is the width. So let's go change all this. So 2.25 width, 2.25, and I'm going to make it, I want to do it similar as before. I'll make it all, let's have a look what the first one was. The first two I did black, and then I did a dotted line. This was because of the layers, because 1 and 2 in this particular case I think were part of the lead metal, and then 3 was on its own, and 4, 5 and 6, and 7 was in the outer layer, and then you had the grey. I'll have to check that, but I think that's what I did. So let's go back onto this one. So without looking now, I'd need to look at the SEM picture to see where they were, to work out what colours to do what. But basically the colours need to come off. I think for now, I'm just going to change all of them to black and all of them to 2.25, and then I'll come to do the alterations to get the shades later. 2.25. Nearly done. Oh, that went wrong. That should be black. That one black. And I know that this one, the last one, let's have a look, was kind of a grey colour. And this was a grey, I'm not sure which grey. Okay, we'll try and find it. Still 2.25, but let's make it grey. Alright, so we're nearly there. Yes, we're going to alter these shades a bit later on. Let's look at the font size, because the font size, this one here, has got a font of, click on home, of 14. And the energy axis title has got a font of 14, energy KV. So I need to put that, I need to say energy. If I block it and the home, click black, and we said it was 14. So energy accounts. 14, and then the font of the numbers, these ones here, they're 14 as well, so all the fonts are 14. Let's change that to 14 and that to 14. So we've nearly done. So this is looking back at the other graph, here it is 0 to 4 in kilo electron volts, and those are the counts. Let's get rid of that for a moment. So here, what I've done here is, rather than having the legend up at the side, I've actually inserted 876123. The reason I did that is when you put it in for a figure, it's much easier to read. It's better just to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up here. So here, sorry, if I go to the other one here, what I'd do is I'd move this temporarily into there. This can then be dragged out. So let's go back to look at the other one. Yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if I can go back to my previous one. If I select, if I can do that, home, find, select, objects, may not let me do that. It does. Control C, go back to my other one, Control V. Oh, didn't like that at all. Oh, no. Right. We'll pause there for a moment. So the computer crashed, and it's taken me a little bit of time to get it back again. But there's my spectra, looking a little bit like the other one, which is this one here. Alright, so on the other one, the other thing to do with the EDX spectra is to label the peaks. So we've got carbons, oxygens, ions, and so forth. So if you have a spectra to look at, then it's quite easy just to go and label them. So I'm copying from the other graph now. Carbon, I'll label that. I'll put the carbon here, up there. Put the oxygen here. Oh, sorry, the carbon. I'll change it to oxygen. So all the peaks down here are oxygens. So I'm only going to label that peak there. Then I've got 2 iron peaks. There's an iron peak here and an iron peak there. I know these are iron peaks because I've kind of looked them up. So when I say that, I mean I've gone on to the SEM on the EDAX facility, and I know that's an iron peak. And I've clicked the different elements and I've seen where the lines are, so I can tell that these two are from iron. And the other one is down here somewhere, so I could put that one there. I think these are size 16. I think I made these, it's up to you, you can keep them as they are. I think I made them grayscale in the other one, but anyway I'll leave that as they are here. So carbon, oxygen, iron, you can't really tell that iron, so I think I'll leave it up there for now, and then I'll put a line down. And I've got aluminium. Aluminium occurs about just below 1.5, so this little peak here is aluminium. So there's not much aluminium. Just that. Then I've got a peak here this is the lead peak. This lead peak. What would be helpful if on the tick marks, because I didn't adjust the tick marks, I'll put those going up. Minor ones, tick marks, I'll put them outside so I can see where everything is. I'll do that one. For minor is 1000. Click it outside. Okay. So here, this peak here is a lead. It's 1.5678, just above about 1.82, and so I know that's lead. So I'm going to label that one lead. Now I know on my other graph I had lead, and then I had a little peak here for silicon, but I can't really see. I can see one little peak here for silicon actually, but I can't see it in any other ones. So just this little here thing is probably silicon. So that's important because the outer layer is more than likely silicon, contains a little bit of silicon rather. There we go, silicon there, lead there, and then this next peak here is the phosphorus peak. So this is the one we're most interested in, because we're interested in where is phosphorus, where is it on the lead mineral scale. So you can see in the spectras 1, 2, 3 and 4 it's not there, but then at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 it's there's a lot of phosphorus. And then this one here on the resin, obviously there's not much phosphorus. Then this peak here, these two here, these are this is gold. So so I'll put gold here. And there, that's gold. And there's another little peak for gold. Which is next to it here. So two little peaks for gold. Okay, so remember to save it. So if it crashes, then obviously these peaks these are lead peaks again, these big ones. So I'm just going to put PB up there. All those peaks here are PB. And then this little peak here that's occurring is lead as well. And then this small peak is palladium from the sputter coater. Palladium, and there's another palladium peak which is kind of this one here. That's from the sputter coater as well. So put that down here. That's palladium. And then the other peak, the last peak that we're most interested in is calcium. I'll put the calcium peak in. And so, like so. And if we have a look, are there any peaks that we can see we haven't really labelled? Hard to tell. No, I think that's pretty much everything. So in other words, what we've identified there is obviously we've got the gold and palladium. Then we can see the outer brown layer here. You can see the iron. There's quite a bit of iron, and in fact on this layer here there's quite a lot of iron going right across the mineral layer. And then here the calcium. We can see the calciums and the phosphorus they do go together. So that brings me to the end of this little video describing how to obtain and stack the EDS spectra.